Hello, I'm here with Elliot Damashek from Go1. I was introduced to Go1 by our Microsoft Venture partners, and um, because we do so much about identity on this channel, it struck me as a super interesting solution. Basically, they've got a catalog of over 200 content providers, e-learning focused, and companies can subscribe to make all of this content available to their employees, integrated into their e-learning systems, their learning management systems. And from an authentication point of view, it's not an easy problem. So, Elliot, did I describe what you do right? Do you want to add a little more to that?
Yeah, that's right. So we work with content providers covering all sorts of learning related topics, from compliance to soft skills to IT skills to industry specific topics that are relevant to employees at companies around the world. And of course, identity is very important to us, because if you think about the learning space, a given employee kind of owns the learning that they've done, and then the certifications that they've done, and all the topics that they've learned so much about via the content that we provide.
Yeah. Well, so tell me a little bit about, first of all, if I'm a new employee, I'm going to get into a complicated scenario fast. Maybe, I'm sorry. So a new employee at Microsoft, and let's just assume I don't know if Microsoft uses Go1 or not. We probably have lots of stuff, but I'm a new employee, and I have to take, maybe a course from, LinkedIn Learning, for example, and it's, how to be a better, developer marketing manager. I'm not in your system yet, but I am in Microsoft system. I click through my little learning portal training. How do you handle that? What do you have to do to do that handoff?
Yeah, so it's a great situation, a very common one. An employee might start, they need to, their company has assigned them anti-harassment or, diversity and inclusion, or, some employee onboarding training, and then they have other training that they're interested in. Historically, that has happened within a learning platform. So there are learning management systems that are out there, and then the market has evolved to have more learning experience platforms. And so historically, we've gotten our content into a given learning platform. But as time has evolved, the places where companies want their employees to take, to have that learning experience, and where employees themselves want to have that learning experience, have become more complex with, with the introduction of communication and collaboration platforms like Teams, for example. So initially you say, okay, well, you route to the learning platform, and the learning platform is passing us, a user identity that we're using to, to recognize that is the same learner that, has taken another piece of training. But we've seen this evolution where now companies want to learn within Microsoft Teams. And so we developed a Microsoft Teams app. Within Microsoft Search, for example. So I'm in SharePoint and I search marketing, right? I see my company's own internal marketing files, but actually now I can see learning content from Go1 that's also there. We need to maintain the same identity, of course, of that learner, whether they're in Teams, whether they're in SharePoint. Now, of course, Microsoft Viva and Microsoft Viva Learning is kind of going into general availability, and that will surface learning in, within Teams and other places in the Microsoft product suite. And of course, we need the same learner identity at all times, because the integrity of that learner record is very important. So what we do to ensure that is we're wherever we are surfacing the content, we're making sure to get the identity of that learner. And the most common way, of course, in the Microsoft product suite that we would do that is the user's Azure AD identity to match up with any other places where we see that user.
And it's, like I said, it's not easy. You make it sound a little easy. We've got software that helps. But what, when you onboard a new customer, for example, what kind of hiccups do you run into? What are the kind of the support scenarios you have to plan for?
Yeah. So when we start up with a new customer, we want to make
Mhm.
sure that we have the most comprehensive view possible of you know of their employees and their identities. And oftentimes at a larger organization, this will require um, setting up a data feed with the company's
Mhm.
HRIS. So wherever they have the integrity of their human resources information, and these are the employees. Sometimes it's relevant to have the employees roles,
Mhm.
not just their identity, but this person is a manufacturing worker, this person is in the finance team, so that that can be used to expose relevant training to those individuals.
Mhm.
So when we set up a customer, that information will generally be coming in, the users and any relevant attributes around those users. And then we'll need to match that up because, again,
Yeah.
you could be accessing this training via your company's learning platform. You could be accessing this training via Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva. You could be accessing the training from within SharePoint. And so whenever that happens, we need to make sure, okay, we see this is the same user
Yeah.
that we that we initially configured. And actually, sometimes if the user is not configured, then we will auto provision the user in real time.
Mhm.
So we'll look at the user. Let's say someone is using our Microsoft Teams app. They actually don't exist as a user in our system, and they're trying to access a piece of content. We don't want to gate them from accessing the piece of content. We recognize that they are, with this company, and so we actually just create them as a user in real time, and then authenticate them into the content.
Yeah, great experience. I think that's what people would expect, and you just have to make it happen magically behind the curtains.
That's the idea. Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
want the user, obviously, to
Yeah.
experience any friction in the process. So
Yeah.
we want to do everything magically behind the curtains that
Yeah.
we possibly can.
What's the team at Go One that makes all this happen? The developers. What's the learning journey been like for them in terms of making all this work and making it scale?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
Yeah.
So initially, as I mentioned, we would integrate into learning platforms, and then with time, it became more complex. So I would
Mhm.
say for the developers, they had to become more familiar with different identity systems.
Mhm.
Obviously, Azure AD being one of them.
Mhm.
And they needed to understand the frameworks that, okay, I need to, for example, within our Microsoft Teams app,
Mhm.
if we want to access the identity of a given end user, that is a permission
Mhm.
that we need to have either from the, organization at the application level, or on a kind of a delegated permission basis with
Mhm.
Microsoft's resource specific consent permission framework. So we need to learn these frameworks for the different systems that we integrate with. So I would say for the developers, first, the concept is just understanding how we think about user identity and the integrity of a given individual's learner record, and just the ethos around that, of what we want the learner experience to be. And then understanding the specifics of the different systems that we're actually integrating into, saying, okay, I understand this framework of why we need to, always have the integrity of
Mhm.
learner and track exactly what they've done so that they have a consistent learning record. Then how do I do that in this particular system? How do I do that while asking, the user for as few permissions as possible, so it's
Mhm.
as frictionless as we can make it?
Yeah, yeah. What do you have any advice for another company that might want to make their service available as an app in Teams? Where would you tell them to start, or what pitfalls should they avoid?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great question. So I think the experience that we had developing on Teams, we worked with the Microsoft Teams partnerships team
Mhm.
as a liaison for us, and they helped with a couple of things. One is they know best practices for developing Teams app. So they were more than happy to even look at our designs in Figma of, hey, here's how we're thinking about the experience. They say, actually, there's a lot of engagement with, message extensions, or there's a lot of engagement in personal apps, whatever that might be. They were helpful in the guidance of exactly how to do that. And then also it was really, really helpful to be liaised into different engineering teams at Microsoft. So of course, the documents are the development documents are public. You can work with them, but to the extent that you run into anything and say, hey, we're thinking about using this permission framework or this other permission framework, or we're trying to understand if we can get the context of what's happening within a channel. Any sort of detailed conversations, they'll generally have someone on the Microsoft engineering team who can actually provide guidance on that. So that was something that we found incredibly helpful by working with the team's partnerships team and almost co-developing and getting best practice advice. And that's something that I definitely recommend when developing a Teams app, or in general with integrating into various parts of the Microsoft platform.
Yeah, that's great to hear, actually. So just any last thoughts? Any last thing you'd like to share with the audience, or what's the most exciting thing coming from Go One next?
Yeah, so lots of exciting things. I think we are looking forward to the launch of Viva Learning general availability, which Microsoft has committed to at some point this fall, and Go One will be a part of that. So that's incredibly exciting. And then I think over time, we envision being more and more embedded across the Microsoft product suite. I think Microsoft has some things in the works, some public and some not public, around the ability to just make kind of third-party software vendor experiences more easily accessible throughout the Microsoft product suite in a more cohesive way. And so we're really, really excited to kind of expose this learning, because our mission is just to make learning experiences as seamless as possible for individuals around the world. And so to be able to surface learning content in lots of different places and have the recommendations of, hey, what's relevant for you? What should you be doing next? How can you get better at your job, get to the next role? That's something that we want to make just incredibly seamless. And there's so much we can do working with Microsoft to make that happen. So I would say that's the exciting next steps as as the work evolves over time.
Yeah, and I really just to wrap up, kind of want to emphasize, like, it's a big deal. It's those types of integrations, that type of content aggregation, the personalization. It's kudos to you guys for taking it on and delivering a pretty great experience. So, thanks a ton for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Bye.